Reach out and respond.
Welcome to the Relevant Radio Reach Out and Respond Summer Pledge Drive.
Call now.
Welcome. We're back with Trending with Timmerie. Thanks for being with us during our pledge drive. And if you've supported Relevant Radio this week, thank you. If you haven't quite yet, you have the opportunity to do so still. So be sure to pay attention as Josh will be joining me in just a little bit. We'll be talking about ways that you can support Relevant Radio. I'd like to kick off this hour by praying together for an end to abortion here in the United States and for our needs to be met during our pledge drive occurring this week. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thy intercession was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, I fly unto thee, O Virgin of Virgins, my Mother. To thee do I come, before thee I stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Holy Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not my petitions, but in thy mercy, hear and answer me. Amen. Welcome to the show. It's great to be with you. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie, and we have a action-packed show this week. I've mentioned that we've been focusing on the theme of the Blessed Virgin Mary and on women in particular. And I think this is important, especially as we're right smack in between two incredible feast days in the church. The Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary into heaven, which we celebrated on the 15th, and coming up here on August 22nd will mark the queenship of Our Lady. Her presence in heaven not only is a presence of being united with God and with her Son, but also the presence of being kind of participating in this coronation of a queen of heaven and earth. And so we talk about topics related to women this week because we're seeing this overall struggle with regard to female happiness, with regard to identity as women. We're struggling in our current culture with an increase in fertility, and maybe you are someone who has been struggling with the cross of infertility. We're going to be walking a little later on through how the saints can be a great aid in this journey of conceiving children and what that may look like in your own life and how they can walk with you day in and day out. I'll also share a little bit about a question I've been asked multiple times over the last couple of weeks, and that's how did you get involved in broadcasting and the pro-life movement? So I'll be sharing a little bit of my story, and ultimately it's a story for all of us, that when we say yes to the will of God, when we're willing to dive in and just give that same fiat that Our Lady gave, how our lives will be truly transformed. We're also going to be talking about a very fascinating study about how women are apparently hardwired to find chivalrous men. The media has rewritten this narrative that all women, including feminists who are searching for equality, actually still want the benevolent sexist. This is fascinating, and we'll unpack it. Gentlemen, lean in because there's much to learn from this study. There's some major news going on, and it actually has to do with a baby boom. Now, when I first read this, wow, it's incredible. There's a baby boom coming out of Kenya. However, I missed in parentheses where it said an elephant baby boom. Now, this is pretty neat because the Kenyan wildlife officials report this recent baby boom of elephants. In fact, they've had a rarity not only with many baby elephants being born this season. I mean, not quite COVID babies, but COVID babies in terms of being born, not necessarily conception. I've been making jokes about the COVID baby boom. This is, I guess you could say in a sense, part of it, even though I think elephants gestate for like 18 months. Can you believe that? Ladies, just think about it. Okay, so here's the rarity that's happened with the elephant population. They actually had in Kenya a set of twins. Apparently this is like almost unheard of. It's so rare for this species. Now, why has there been an elephant boom? Well, apparently it's had to do with increased rain, copious amounts of vegetation available for baby type of habitat, and even something to do with decreased foot traffic recently, that more children have come into this world and the elephants have remained healthy, haven't been attacked. We could get into the whole environmental side of things, but actually, as I do think about that, I was researching this and I heard that between 1989 and today, the nation's elephant population has actually doubled there in Kenya. Now, this is fascinating for me because I'm a huge fan of going to the wild animal park. Well, that's what it used to be here in San Diego. It's the Safari Park. It's the partner to the San Diego Zoo, which is one of the best zoos out there. In my opinion, the Wild Animal Park, Safari Park, is way better. Apparently, we can't call it the Wild Animal Park. I think that's not quite PC in our day and age. But this is what's interesting. I am always amazed by how many people in our world today are so quick to defend animals, to defend innocent, sweet animals, to be animal rights advocates. Yet I have to say, a lot of the time, these same exact people are anti-children, don't want to have kids, all about population control, and so on and so forth. Why is it that there's something so lovely and cute about an animal, but not about a child? Have you ever thought about that? It's funny because I was scrolling through Instagram the other day, and there's this feminist page called Femme Things. And there was a photo of a woman holding a giant sign that says, "Women who don't want kids, ... And there are other signs all around her. And they say, women who don't want kids do not need pity, are not old and lonely and crazy cat ladies. They do not hate kids. They are not selfish. They will not necessarily change their minds and are not less of a woman." It also goes on to say that they do not have to explain their choices to anyone. I found this post absolutely fascinating. In fact, I'll have to repost it during the break. I'll find it and pull it up. And the reason why I think this post is so interesting to me is that I have to tell you, I have been surrounded by so many women of faith and not of faith who just aren't interested in having kids. In fact, at times, they're not even interested in children and are perhaps extremely annoyed by them in general. And I want to dive into why many people maybe don't want kids. And there's a lot that we can unpack here. And I have to tell you, I'm one of those people who's not really been a huge fan of children. It's just not been my, I think a lot of kids today, it has more so to do with how kids are so bratty and undisciplined anymore, that my tolerance can be somewhat low. And it's funny because actually when there's a well-behaved child, I enjoy being around the well-behaved child. So I think I just like good children, not poorly behaved and poorly disciplined kids. But I mean, even the example of my own mom, she did not like kids, didn't think she'd have kids. It's something she just didn't think a lot about. And then here I am, her oldest, Timmery, came along. She thought I was a tumor at first because she didn't know what was happening, but I was Timmery, not Tummery. Those will be the nicknames that will live on forever. But you see, there are a lot of people who just maybe don't think about having kids, don't think that they'll be good moms. Many women can't even fathom it, perhaps because they don't have a man in their life to think about being a parent with. It's kind of difficult to think about being a parent on your own. Some women have a fear of their bodies changing, becoming lame, becoming that woman who can't do anything anymore, or perhaps all she talks about are her children. There might even be anxiety with regard to dealing with the children. Maybe this has to do with triggers from an upbringing that they themselves experienced. But I think that it's fascinating because the truth is, God equips parents with a special love for their children that He blesses them with. I've heard this actually from countless women who have said, I don't even like kids, but I love my kids. My mom is one of those people who says that. I love my children. There is no question about it, but I don't like other kids that much. And I get it because I think all of us, myself included, can be a little annoyed by the noise, the brattiness, and the outright poor upbringing that many kids have nowadays with the lack of correction. Don't get me started on parents who will never tell their children no. Oh, I'll have to tell you stories one day. One of my worst decisions ever was volunteering for Vacation Bible School when I was in high school. I begged my mom at the end of the first day, I'm just not going back. And I'm not one to just say, hey, I'm quitting, I'm done. Needless to say, she made me finish off the week, but it was horrible. Nails on a chalkboard for me, just not my thing. But here's where I would say, I think for us to ponder, something to think about. Spiritual motherhood is directly connected to biological motherhood. Even if we are not biologically having children, or even if we can't quite think about physically having children, all women are called to a sense of maternity that's deeply ingrained in our nature. You see, our culture rejects spiritual motherhood, yet spiritual motherhood challenges us as women to love those who are in need. Even to take delight in children, even when it's maybe not something that we're a fan of. Not that we have to spend time with them always, but to have this sense of love and generosity and kindness, because the reality is that other people challenge us to grow. And this can be lived out with our very own spiritual motherhood. We'll talk about this a little more and how it's related actually to how many women today still want what the media calls a benevolent sexist for a partner, even though this doesn't quite bring equality to a relationship. We'll be right back here on Trending with Timmerie.
Hi, this is Father Rocky. Have you heard about the special gifts we have for you today only? I'm really excited for you to have this pair of gifts. For $1 a day donation, we have something brand new. It's the Family Rosary Across America 1 Decade Rosary. Use it every evening when you pray with us. It's got beautiful green beads and a beautiful image of Our Lady. You'll also get Patrick Madrid's book, Now What? That's the title of it. And it'll help you go deeper in your Catholic faith. Now, that's a dynamic duo of gifts, but we've got a limited supply, so don't wait too long or you might miss out. Both gifts are yours today only, as our way of saying thank you for your donation of $1 a day, $365 for the year. Again, the Family Rosary Across America 1 Decade Rosary and Patrick's book are yours today only at the $1 a day level, but we only have so many, so get yours now. Donate now, please, online at relevantradio.com or on the Relevant Radio app.
Welcome to this Wednesday hour of Trending with Timmerie. I'm Josh Raymond, joining Timmerie here just for a moment as we're asking you to support Relevant Radio with your pledge, your financial contribution. And you just heard Father Rocky right there talking about those 1 decade Family Rosary Across America, the 1 decade rosaries. And the one thing that he didn't mention is he actually took those to the shrine of Our Lady of Good Help, and not only to the shrine, but to the actual spot where Our Lady appeared there, the only approved apparition site in the entire United States. And he took it right there and brought it to that site and prayed with them, and we would love to send that to you as our thank you gift for your coming in at that $1 a day level, making that pledge of $365. And of course, along with that, just like Father said, the book by Patrick Madrid, Now What? And that is your thank you gift when you make that pledge of $365 online at relevantradio.com through the Relevant Radio app or by calling 877-291-0123. And Timmerie, as you were talking about the different ways that people might not like kids, but once they start having their own kids, they really love them. That's absolutely the case for me. I am not necessarily a kid person, but adore my own children. The other thing that I'll just throw out there too is the more kids you have, it actually helps when they get to be dating age, because in a large family, it really weeds out the people who aren't going to be able to handle a large family. It has to be a really special someone who comes along and isn't intimidated and says, all right, I like this person enough, and I can handle their family, and I'll stick around. So if you're able, the more kids you can have, it really does make it to where you're going to kind of weed out those people that you don't want to date your daughters or your sons.
Oh, gosh, Josh, you're cracking me up here. And you have 8 kids, don't you?
9, actually.
9
yeah.
children. Oh, I'm missing one. We're losing track over here.
Yeah, we usually miss one someplace, too.
Hey, if you'd like to donate now, you can go ahead and head over to the Relevant Radio app or relevantradio.com. You can call us as well at 1-877-291-0123. And Josh, I heard an incredible story this week from a listener of Relevant Radio, and I don't know if you've heard this one. It's about James, who's been listening to Relevant Radio for quite some time, and somehow he actually started listening when he was in prison and in a relationship with a wonderful Catholic woman. He converted while in prison because of Relevant Radio. I'm looking at the details as they're coming in. And after listening to Relevant Radio and his conversion, he started dating a wonderful Catholic woman through Catholic Match, thanks to Relevant Radio, by the way, and our sponsors. And he's asking for prayers to continue to strengthen his faith and his chaste relationship, hoping that it will result in marriage. These are the changes in marriage and family that we see from Catholic Radio, helping us to be more in tune with our faith, with the potential of marriage, and with the potential of having children that we just don't hear about in secular radio.
That's right. That's what your donation provides, is it touches that individual life. And that's why I love those testimonials, Timmery, is because that's just one example. And I'll be honest with you, we receive dozens, if not hundreds, of emails, letters, phone calls every single day here at Relevant Radio about how something somebody heard impacted their life in some way. And that's what your donation provides. So again, you might consider coming in at that $1 a day level, $365, and let us send you that thank you gift of that 1 decade rosary, 877-291-0123.
We're talking about what you're thinking about. You're listening to Trending with Timmery on Relevant Radio and the Relevant Radio app.
I mentioned earlier this theme of how there are a lot of women out there who just don't want to have children. I actually think that relates to another story I want to share with you here, because they're connected in our culture right now. There was a study that came out talking about the types of men the majority of women are still interested in. And think of this. Even feminists prefer chivalrous men. Why is that? Now, here's what the study came out showing. It's a study from the University of Kent and Iowa State University. Now, what they saw is that, in fact, women want sexist men, but they want men who are chivalrous. So let's define this a little bit. So women want men who are quote-unquote sexist, according to this study. So men who are chivalrous. How do we define chivalry? Men who, in this instance, we talk about benevolence. Men who are well-meaning and kind, who are protectors. Yet these same women are women who want equality. They want to contribute to the income of the family. They want everything to be equal, even often within the home. They don't like the idea of gender differences and so forth. Yet they want to be treated in a unique and special way that makes them feel cherished, protected, provided for, and committed to. Now, at the same time, the study tries to make this sound as if women are looking for men who are patronizing and undermining. Well, those are character flaws, and in fact, that's not what we see women are looking for. Women want men who are going to give them special treatment. And you see, yet at the same time, the study seems to make it sound as if a man being the primary breadwinner is wrong and sexist and offensive. At the same time, it tries to make it sound, the secular media, when looking at this study from the University of Kent and Iowa State University, they try to make it sound that, well, there's a threat to equality if there's any idea of differences between men and women. But again, women want to be cherished and looked after. End of story. It's clear. Women are hardwired with this survival instinct that goes beyond survival just for themselves and into the survival of others, potential children or children they may already have. Women want men who will open doors. Listen, gentlemen, listen to this. Open doors, pay for dates, protect them, provide for them, and commit to them, showing that they are willing to invest in them in the relationship. In fact, this is fascinating. These same women who hold to very intense feminist ideologies, saying that men and women are equal almost to the point of being same, although they may hold to that ideology, they want a man who's physiologically and biologically different from them, because we're called to complementarity. And this is actually very consistent with a study that came out in 2017 from researchers in the UK at Coventry and Aberystwyth University. Here's what they saw. Ultimately, that women responded the best to men with muscles and wealth. Okay, this is hilarious, because when you think about this, people are like, okay, Timmery. No, this is what the scientists and researchers are showing. In other words, women were interested in muscles and wealth because they were looking for men who could protect them and support them in a family. This comes back to the whole topic of why are women not really interested in having kids anymore? I think it's because a lot of women are looking around and holding to a particular type of worldview and ideology, yet their biological complementarity in who they're searching for is telling them to look for something different, for someone different, for a complement, someone who's physiologically and biologically different from them. Yet we've conditioned society to seek after gender-neutral personality traits, characteristics. We're trying to force ourselves in society into expectations that actually decrease the natural complementarity between the sexes, showing that men are different from women and vice versa. And that's actually a good thing. I think a lot of women struggle with the idea of having children because I don't think they're interested in having children with the men they see out there. I'm going to say that again. I think a lot of women are not interested in having children because they're not interested in having children with the men who are out there. Think about it. We were talking yesterday about how virginity is an adverse sexual lifestyle today. Well, what does that teach a woman if a man is not willing to respect and protect her body, to provide the leadership and the emotional and physical strength, and that includes the strength of self-control? You see, muscles and wealth don't mean as much as it sounds like. It's just that we perceive, us women, often muscles and wealth to mean someone who's consistent, committed, can provide not just materially, but also spiritually with their leadership. And this is what we're looking for as women. We've not changed all that much, even though ideologies might look a tad different. We'll be right back here on Trending with Timmery.
Well, if your muscles are fading like mine and your kids have taken most of your wealth, it's okay. But hopefully you've got a little left over, because this is our Relevant Radio Pledge Drive, and we're hoping you can help us out here as we're over halfway through this week of our Pledge Drive already. Hard to believe. Josh Raymond here along with Timmery on Trending, and almost halfway through this hour. And we've been talking all day long about this very special thank you gift that we have, 1 decade Family Rosary Across America Rosary, and that along with the book Now What? A Guide for New and Not So New Catholics by Patrick Madrid, and we're sending that as our thank you gift for your pledge of $1 a day, $365 for the year. And if you can make that pledge, again, you'll be helping Relevant Radio in such a substantial way. And on top of that, you're going to have these thank you gifts, these 1 decade rosaries. Father Rocky, our executive director, actually took out to the shrine of Our Lady of Good Help and brought right to the very spot where Our Lady appeared there. This is the only approved apparition site in the U.S., and such a special thing that you can have this rosary that's been right where Our Lady appeared there to Sister Adele Bryce. And on top of that, if you listen regularly to the Family Rosary Across America, which begins here in just barely over a half hour, these are rosaries that Father Rocky has specifically chosen for you to be able to pray along with him each evening during the Family Rosary Across America. So make that pledge of $1 a day right now. Help support Relevant Radio. RelevantRadio.com. You can pledge through the Relevant Radio app or by calling 877-291-0123.
That's right, Josh. If you haven't already, please make your pledge today. It's not too late. The days and time is ticking away, and we have a need of $2.3 million to continue to keep Relevant Radio operating, because we operate based on your generosity. Do you ever, Josh, kind of find yourself, I know you're at the point where your kids are getting ready to leave the home. Do you have any who have left the home yet?
Right. We've got 2 in college.
2 in college. Well, I keep thinking about so many of the parents I hear from who reach out on Trending, who have prayed for their son or daughter to deepen their faith, for them to return to the church. And they're looking for ways to speak the language that their kids are surrounded by, to understand the obstacles that they're facing. Josh, this is exactly what Trending does. It's designed to help reach out to those who are in this culture and trying to navigate really challenging things that we've never been exposed to before, but also to help parents be equipped to understand what that struggle is right now. And this is why we're asking you to support our needs here at Relevant Radio to continue to make content like this possible.
That's exactly right. You are the ones who make this possible. We couldn't do it without you, and you become a partner with us in evangelizing. So when you make that donation, if you come in at that $1 a day level, listen over the next days and weeks and months as you hear people who are calling in and they're asking questions and getting answers, or they're seeking for some sort of inspiration or encouragement. They're seeking for that hope. They're discouraged by what life has given them, and then they receive that answer. Know that you're a part of giving that answer to them because of your generosity right now when you make that pledge at relevantradio.com, through the Relevant Radio app, or by calling 877-291-0123. Please make it your goal to reach people, and you can do that through Relevant Radio by making that pledge right now. Reach out and respond. 877-291-0123.
The Relevant Radio Reach Out and Respond Summer Pledge Drive continues.
Reach out and respond.
Welcome back to Trending with Timmerie here on Relevant Radio. You know, people keep asking me, how did you get involved in broadcasting? How and why are you doing what you're doing? And I have to tell you, I'll unpack a little bit of that right now, but it comes to saying yes. How willing are you to do something that makes you feel uncomfortable? Because I have to tell you, it starts with a conviction, but it also starts with saying yes to doing things that completely take you out of your comfort zone. Coming up in just a little bit here on Trending with Timmerie, we'll be talking about the cross of infertility and how our faith can truly take you through that journey. And maybe you know someone who's struggling with infertility. I really want you to lean in and listen, because there's a lot that we can do to better support our friends and family members who are walking through this journey so that we can be there with them without making it more difficult. We'll touch on that in just a little bit here on the show. So the question was, how did I get involved in broadcasting and the pro-life movement? The long and the short of it is I grew up in the Catholic world, and I also grew up with my mom being incredibly involved in the pro-life movement, along with my dad and the rest of the family, all of us being pulled along to be involved in various projects. But I have to tell you, despite being raised in a Catholic and pro-life home, I remember kind of having this attitude when I was really young and didn't fully understand what abortion was. That, well, and this is my childlike mind working, kind of 12 years old, maybe a couple years before that. I remember laying in my room looking at the ceiling thinking, well, if a mom doesn't want her baby and the baby's going to be unwanted or maybe in bad circumstances, abused, well, why can't a woman just not have her child? And I remember kind of thinking, like, maybe I kind of am okay with abortion because I thought that's what it was, just not having a baby. And then when I was about 13 years old, my eyes were opened to see what exactly an abortion actually was. And I saw the gruesome and graphic aftermath of an abortion, of an aborted baby, at a very, very early stage of development when many women at that time would barely even kind of actually realize that they were pregnant. And from then on out, when I was 13, I actually started sidewalk counseling in front of the abortion clinic at 13. I remember some of the women who were 2 and 3 times older than me even, who would say, have you even had sex? Have you had a child? What are you doing talking to me? It was always very fascinating, but it was amazing the lives that were saved there. With that, I got more involved in the pro-life movement in my own ways, in addition to volunteering and helping with various projects my mom was involved in. And I ended up becoming a national spokesperson for a pro-life organization that took on various topics having to do with abortion in the news, in the legal system, and we're a youth organization. So I do, interviews with CNN or various Christian and Catholic news locations, and some were hostile to the message, others weren't. And as the time progressed, next thing you knew, I was talking also about the impact of contraception. And then we were talking about the confusion and ambiguity with sexuality regarding the LGBTQ issues. And I have to tell you, me being involved in spokesperson work was the biggest joke, because public speaking, not my forte. I'm that person who all the way through college, and I had already been involved in doing radio work all the way through college. If we were in class, and I remember, you'd be called on to read a part of a book, even into grad school, my heart would be pounding. I would be sweating. I'd have all this anxiety about having to speak in front of everyone. And so I come back to this whole message of saying, we have to have our hearts convicted to be willing to say yes to do things that will make us feel incredibly uncomfortable. And I'll never forget when I graduated from grad school, one of my professors, Dr. Michael Barber, said, hey, if you're called to do something special, it's not a compliment. I mean, we look at the various saints and individuals who have had speech impediments, yet they've been called to be advocates. I mean, Moses would use Aaron to be his public advocate to do the work of God. We look at St. Peter, who denied Christ 3 times. We can look at all of these models. If God is asking you to do something for his kingdom, there is nothing special about you. It's not about pampering our egos or supporting our egos or all the things I did, giving a good pat on the back. It's a matter that our Lord is convicting our hearts to say yes to him and to the things that he needs us to be workers in his vineyard for. And I have to tell you, another one of those moments where I went, oh no, this is not for me. Not just public speaking, not just speaking in public, but I'll never forget when I started working with the crisis pregnancy centers. It was when I was in college, and I was interviewing with a crisis pregnancy center, seeing how I could help, maybe with social media and various things. It was a great interview, and I remember sitting in the interview, and as I'm sitting there, the woman just reminded me so much of the Blessed Virgin Mary and her love for Our Lady. And I remember sitting here and going, you know what, Lord? This is where I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to work at this crisis pregnancy center. Whatever you want me to do, I will do. I say this, I make this prayer in the interview, and then the interviewee looks at me and says, okay, so I'd like to hire you. Here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to head up our chastity education program. Now, you have to know I had already been writing pro-life blogs and various things, and had been very outspoken with training and education related to abortion, not any other topic. And the one topic I always said I didn't want to address was like, yeah, I believe in chastity and all that, but I don't want to talk about it. Like, Lord, I'll do anything else. And I had said that multiple times before. I'm sorry, I just don't want to talk about that 3-letter word. I don't. It's not my cup of tea. Someone else can do it. And here I am. I just told our Lord in prayer, like, I'll do anything you want me to do. And next thing you knew, I was going to high schools and various churches giving chastity education talks. And next thing you know, I was talking about the LGBTQ issue and why traditional marriage mattered. And I have to tell you, this is what happens when we say yes to our Lord. He will call us to do the exact thing that takes us outside of our comfort zone, makes us bleed, makes us exhausted, challenges us even in our interpersonal relationships, because the work we're doing for the new evangelization is difficult. So you see, there's nothing special about you or me besides being a child of God when we're involved in public ministry. It's a matter of saying yes and being willing to be a worker within the kingdom. And I think that that's what's so important. Are we listening to the call that is out there and available to us? Because even following my own education journey, I'll never forget when we were kind of thinking, well, what do I want to study in school? I thought, well, I want to study business, because if I study business, it can help the pro-life movement that operates so much so on a hope and a prayer. We need more business savviness. And so I started with business, and next thing you know, I saw these people taking theology classes, more theology classes than I was required to take as part of my course, and more philosophy classes. I was seeing all the marketing and social media and communication skills that were out there, and I ended up deciding to change my major, and here's why. Back in 2010, we saw this radical change with regard to our healthcare system and concern with regard to what would happen surrounding abortion and contraception and how this would impact a woman's identity in our culture. And then in 2012, right around there, we saw the HHS mandate implementing that individuals, businesses had to pay for contraception, sterilization, and abortifacient drugs that cause an abortion, just through a couple of pills. And for me, I remember hearing a letter that Pope Benedict wrote just days before the HHS mandate came out. And ultimately, he was pointing, it was almost like a prophecy. He saw what was coming in the United States. And he pointed to how the crisis of our culture, the crisis with regard to family and contraception and abortion, really had to do with a crisis of faith. And that's what led me to really go deeper in my faith, because I could work in all the crisis pregnancy centers I wanted, but ultimately the questions that women had within those centers related back to our Lord. And so while we talk about LGBTQ issues, abortion, contraception, the fact that people are struggling with marriage today, the reason we talk about that is because that's where they're hurting, but it's an opportunity to lead them closer to Christ. That's why I studied theology. And I have a master's degree. I never would have even thought that's something I would do. But it's because we are called to be equipped to answer the questions and confusion of this culture. And the true answer is our Lord Jesus Christ. But in order to give that to others, we have to be equipped. And so you ask, what's my story? It's a matter of each of us saying yes to the challenges that are in the culture so that we can provide the truth and the faith that people need. We'll be right back here on the show, and we'll be talking a little bit more about the struggle that so many people are facing with fertility, how you can journey through this, or also how you can support friends who are facing this exact cross.
Bringing Christ to the world through the media. Here's a Relevant Radio Miracle Moment.
Not that we're supposed to ask for signs, but Mary's always really wonderful with her signal graces. And the last one in particular that I had, I went through probably the worst moment of my life. And I had begged her on my rosary, which was very hard for me to pray at that moment. Please just send me a rose, a yellow, I'm very particular, a yellow rose with pink in it. And I wasn't able to receive the Eucharist for a couple of weeks just out of grief and feeling very distant from God. And I went to Mass, and I was walking away to not receive the Eucharist, went to a back room, and there was a whole bouquet of yellow roses with pink in them. And I knew immediately that that was my sign. It was amazing.
This miracle moment was brought to you by you. Relevant Radio is listener supported. Give online at relevantradio.com or on the Relevant Radio app.
I love hearing those miracle moments, and again, those are made possible by you, by your generosity, by your support of Relevant Radio. And there's really two main ways that you can support Relevant Radio. One is you can keep us in your prayers. And if you don't pray for Relevant Radio, I'd ask you to add that to the intentions that you pray for daily. We really do need your prayers. And the other way that you can obviously support Relevant Radio, since we're in a pledge drive, is to make that donation, make that financial contribution to support Relevant Radio. And again, if you've already done that, thank you very much. Thank you for being so generous and making that donation. If you haven't, then today is a wonderful day to do that. Number one, because it's just a good time to donate, and we really do need your support. We really do need your help. But also, we have a very special thank you gift. If you might consider coming in at that $1 a day level, making a pledge of $365 over the course of the year, then Father Rocky has selected these family Rosary Across America 1 Decade Rosaries. He's actually taking them to the site of the apparition of Our Lady of Good Help, where Our Lady appeared as the Queen of Heaven. And he's taken them right to that exact spot. And we're going to send that along with Patrick Madrid's book, Now What? And Patrick's going to sign the book for you. And again, that's for your pledge of $1 a day, $365 over the course of the year. Today's the only day that we're going to be offering those 1 Decade Rosaries. So if you're waiting and thinking, maybe I'll get around to it later, well, we have 13 minutes remaining in this hour, 13 minutes to go, and you'll not hear us offer that again during any other point during this week as you're listening to Trending with Timmery. And Timmery, I was thinking also about how you were talking about getting out of your comfort zone, you know, and how God calls us to different things. And just in that same way, I never would have thought nor have desired to be on the air asking people to donate money for anything, you know, let alone right. Catholic radio. But no, I wouldn't have wanted to be on the air to ask people to donate money. But I'll tell you that I worked at a Protestant radio station before this, and we'd get occasional people who would, you know, contact us and say, hey, you know, something that I heard, it really helped me out. Here at Relevant Radio, every single day, every day, we get all kinds of correspondence from listeners, whether it's emails, whether it's people on social media, whether it's phone calls. So many people every single day telling us how Relevant Radio is making a difference. And that's because people that are listening right now are generous and say, we want to continue this. We want to support this. And you can do the same. Make your pledge. RelevantRadio.com, through the Relevant Radio app, or 877-291-0123.
We've been focusing on this theme, Josh, of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and as we're smack dab between the two feast days of Our Lady, how are we going to say yes the way Our Lady did? Give our fiat. You know, we say this when we pray the Angelus prayer. What will we do to say, your will be done, Lord? Yes. And I think that one of those ways, in the midst of COVID, in the midst of the world we are living in, people aren't able to volunteer and get involved as much as they used to. And so donating to Relevant Radio can be the way that you say yes. So I really want to encourage you, if you haven't already, give us a call. The number is 877-291-0123. You can give it relevantradio.com or on our Relevant Radio app. And maybe you have the ability to donate $5,000, $20,000, whatever that gift that you have the ability to give might be.
Bridging your Catholic faith with your everyday life. You're listening to Trending with Timmery on Relevant Radio and the Relevant Radio app.
You're listening to Trending with Timmery. It's great to be back with you. Are you subscribed to our podcast? Are you able to have at your fingertips an episode you just heard of Trending available so that you can text it to a friend? Whether we're talking about infertility, whether we're talking about abortion, whether we're talking about the Blessed Virgin Mary and her feast day coming up this weekend of the Queenship of Our Lady, what does that mean for our life? These are things that you can pass along. Head over to relevantradio.com/trending, where you can subscribe to the podcast on whatever podcast app that you like. We're there. And send it to others. Encourage them to listen, because this is a resource for you that we are asking you to invest in, so that others can have this resource given to them to help them go deeper in their faith and answer those difficult questions. Speaking of difficult questions, a really difficult topic in our culture right now has to do with fertility. We've been talking about this a lot on Trending, and I shared some of my own story, but I want to talk about infertility as a cross for people who are continuing to face this. There are so many great resources within the faith and the spirituality that we have that can help us journey through this. Is this something you're facing? Perhaps even just talking about fertility can be just as difficult as the experience itself, especially when people make comments such as just adopt, eat this, take that, try IVF, not recognizing that goes against your moral code or against life and destroys life. Or sometimes people have even said, and have said it to me as well, just what's wrong with you? As if something's so wrong with you that it just kind of starts to make you feel like maybe you're responsible, or it's just adding to the grief that you're experiencing. If you know someone who's struggling with fertility, I want you to really take this 3-piece approach here. They don't need you to throw solutions at them right away. So these are the 3 things you can do. If and when they bring it up, that you just listen. You listen to what they're experiencing, because many people, sometimes not even themselves, are willing to just listen. They're searching for answers. Second, I challenge you to be a prayer warrior for them. And third, when you do want to try to provide that solution, remember that you're called to listen and first ask, what have you tried? And if they don't know about NAPRO technology and fertility care practitioners who treat underlying causes of fertility, if you feel able, subtly and gently pass on the information without being pushy. Again, listen, be a prayer warrior, and ask what they've tried. And if they don't know, recommend NAPRO Technologies. There are incredible NAPRO doctors who have incredible science and medical information and treatment to help women that doesn't compromise their body, their faith, or the life of their child through things like IVF. NAPRO Technology doesn't do any of that. It helps with a holistic approach to the whole human person, respecting faith and body. But I want to talk about fertility from the perspective of our faith. From the perspective of the fact that infertility, or just this confusion, this dislike even for fertility, isn't anything new. We're talking earlier in the show about that photo I mentioned, which we're posting on social media, of this woman who has a sign where she's talking about how just because I don't want kids doesn't mean I need pity, that I'm a crazy cat lady, that I'm selfish, and so forth. But it brought me back to this whole conversation of fertility overall, whether you don't want to have children or whether you're struggling to conceive yourself. You see, the biblical story of women has always touched on this restlessness and wrestling with God to conceive a child since the fall. You see Sarah, Rachel, Hannah, Elizabeth in the Old Testament, and leading up to our Lord with Elizabeth. And St. Teresa Benedict of the Cross, also known as Edith Stein, who lived during World War II, I've mentioned, in her Essays to Women discusses how part of the curse of the fall impacted our overall struggle of fertility. And so I encourage you that this is nothing new, but the miraculous can take place in our lives. And to turn to saints such as St. Rita, but also to turn to saints if maybe you struggled with miscarriage, such as St. Catherine of Siena and St. Catherine of Sweden, for company along the journey.
I love that line, Timmery. The miraculous can happen. And that's something that we see all the time here at Relevant Radio. And it's because we hear so many people who tell us about how they pray for a miracle and they end up having that prayer answered. And, you know, there's kind of the old saying that God always answers prayers. Sometimes he says yes, sometimes he says no, or sometimes he says wait. And but for some reason, and I've got to believe it's because we've got such a community of believers that come together. You know, we're about 4.5 minutes away from the Family Rosary across America right now, and so many people call in with their intentions. And Jesus says, where two or more of you are gathered in my name, there am I in the midst of you. And when we have that such a substantial group of us that are together, that are praying, that are asking for those different needs or those wants that we have, and especially when we're praying for others, you know, when it's not those selfish prayers, then God really does listen to our hearts and listen to what we want. And, you know, Jesus, he talked about that. He said, you know, if you as parents want to give good things to your children, you wouldn't give your children a snake when they ask for a loaf of bread. You wouldn't give them something different. Well, then how much more does your Father in heaven love you and want to give you good things? And so we just have to put ourselves there, and we have to ask. St. James, in his letter, he says, you don't receive because you don't ask. And that's one of the things that's so wonderful about Relevant Radio. We encourage each other, let's ask God. And let's not ask for small things, let's ask for big things. God can work any miracle that we need in our lives. And you're helping to support just that when you support Relevant Radio. You're helping to support miracles that can happen. The biggest miracle that we can watch every single day that happens in front of us, go to Mass and watch simple bread and simple wine transubstantiate, miraculously transform into the body, blood, soul, and divinity of our Lord Jesus Christ. You might consider making a pledge of $365, $1 a day, to help support Relevant Radio. And for that, Timmery, we're going to send anybody who makes that $1 a day pledge a Family Rosary Across America, 1 Decade Rosary, along with the book Now What? A Guide for New and Not So New Catholics by Patrick Madrid. Again, you can make your pledge 877-291-0123. You can make it at relevantradio.com or through the Relevant Radio app. But we serve a God who wants to bestow upon us good things, and it's so wonderful to know that we have that loving Father in heaven.
That's right, Josh. The number is 877-291-0123. Or again, head over to your Relevant Radio app if you haven't downloaded it yet. Right there, you can go ahead and make your donation. And I just want to emphasize, available today only is that Family Rosary Decade, beautiful rosary with special blessings that have been bestowed upon it that we've been talking about from Our Lady of Good Help. But I have to tell you, we need your help. I'm looking at an update that's come in, and we are just past our 50% of what we need. We're at about 51%. We're halfway there. It's the end of the day on Wednesday. We need you to step up and support Relevant Radio in helping us to get to our goal of 2.3 million.
877-291-0123. You can pledge online at relevantradio.com or through the Relevant Radio app. And Timmery, you're exactly right. That 1 Decade Family Rosary, that has been taken by Father Rocky out to the Shrine of Our Lady of Good Help, the only approved Marian apparition site in the entire U.S., and Father Rocky actually took it. They built a chapel actually on top of the site, so you go down into the crypt, and that's the actual site where Our Lady appeared, and he brought those rosaries down there to that exact place where Our Lady appeared to Sister Adele Bryce. She identified herself as the Queen of Heaven, and so you're going to have these rosaries, this rosary that'll be sent to you when you make that pledge of $1 a day. 877-291-0123. It's our way of saying thank you for being so generous. 877-291-0123. You can pledge at relevantradio.com. You can pledge through the Relevant Radio app. And along with that 1 Decade Rosary, again, we'll send you the book by Patrick Madrid, Now What? And it's a fantastic book that gives a little explanation of why we do certain things as Catholics and maybe why we don't do other things as Catholics. And Patrick's even going to sign the book for you when you make that $1 a day pledge. 877-291-0123, relevantradio.com, or the Relevant Radio app. Please reach out and respond.